I find it a little hard to believe we're back with the third programme, and it's amazing what goes into everything that's being done, and the smallest part of it, I think, is me just sat here talking, and the rest of it down to Ali Buckman and a friend of his to put it all together. I can only hope you're enjoying what's gone on so far. And so far, we got back to meeting up with my mother last time. I cannot even begin to say what a magic moment that was, and the joy it was to take her out for a cup of tea and just spend some time with her. And to be honest with you, when I got back, I think carp fishing was probably the last thing on my mind, but I wanted to keep going, just to, I don't know, keep my hand in whatever, just give me time to think about where I thought the rest of my life was going, and probably spend a little bit of time in the joy of starting to get better. And unbeknown to me, and I could never have known how downhill it was about to get. One of the biggest things that I found is the things that I find through the internet, and the way things have actually happened. And you'll have to forgive me, Anthony and Anthony, but I have tried to ring you earlier on to get it, your last name. And the two guys will end up as Anthony and Anthony, unfortunately, because they haven't got back to me, who inquired if I'd like to go fishing with them, father and son, on the Pads Lake at Yateley. It was coming up to September 2019, and I couldn't think of a better place to go fishing. I mean, they'd hired it out for a few days. There was no way I could stay there with the 4 days they were there, but I decided to do the first couple of days. And I met up with them 10 o'clock one morning. We had a mooch around the Pads Lake, and it looked wonderful. And I made probably the most unsociable decision I could have made when we were looking at the swims, and I fished on Goose Point, the far end of it, into quite open water, a long way from where the Pads Lake gets its name from, the two main sets of pads. I saw fish moving out there. It was quite weedy, and yeah, it looked absolutely perfect to me. And to be honest with you, it was an unbelievable session in every respect. I got it bang on with the placement of the hook baits, which would take me somewhere a little bit later on as well. And that information, as I've always said in carp fishing, always take note of the things you do, because it very often comes back and helps you in the future. I had a fair few fish up to high 20s, and unbelievably late on the second evening, I fought and played through the weed a massive mirror of 40 pound and 10 ounces. Wrong, 40 pound and 7 ounces. Sorry, let's get the ounces right. It was an amazing fish, and one that had been out a lot more than that. I think it had been out 40, 44, 45 pound before, but it weighed what it weighed, and it was an unbelievable fish to share with young Anthony on the bank as well. I don't know what happened with the light levels or the cameras. I am no technician, but the pictures were awful. But the memories will stay with me forever, and I will never be able to thank those two guys. And I see them on the odd occasion enough for what they did for me. I must apologise. I've no footage of the 40 pound 7 ounce mirror I had yesterday evening. It was right on last light. The last thing I ever want to do is retain a fish for any length of time. So I got the photographs, and she got on her way. This will be my final fish of the session, fifth one, 27 pound and 6 ounces. I can't tell you how chuffed I am about it. It's been a truly amazing trip to Yateley Pads Lake, and yeah, a little bit of my past, and it's nice to see that the lake's future is complete. Yeah, I'm trying to look down at my notes now because there was a very sad bit that happened on that particular session. I'd had a mug that had 10 fishermen's excuses on it, and I'd had that mug for years. If you watch things or see things in magazines that included making a brew, you would have seen that mug, and I dropped it and broke it. And I said on my Facebook and Instagram what a sad occasion it was. And a guy called Matt Small, who I've met subsequently, he's a wonderful guy, and hello Matt and all of your family. He sent me the most fantastic mug. It was all about my wife, and yeah, we might dream a big fish, but my wife is the most important thing. And I've used that mug ever since, and Matt, you can guarantee I'm trying to look after it as much as I can. Now, the biggest point for me, as I said at the end of the last show, was to get myself back down to Essex. It was so important to me. It was a lake. Yes, I was familiar with the lake, but somewhere I hadn't been for a long time. So I planned a session. Wasn't really bothered about catching anything or not. I was just happy to be there. A very quiet lake in wonderful surroundings. So I went down. I did 36 hours down there. I didn't catch anything, but I spent the vast majority of my time casting and looking around the swims, seeing what the extent of the weed was. Most of the features that I knew before were still there, and it was really exciting. I loved it. Didn't meet a soul down there, and it was as quiet as ever. Now, aren't we all the same? We start to dream of fish that we're going to catch, things that you want to happen, and things that I obviously never thought I would do again at times. While I was thinking about going back down and packing my gear one Sunday, I was thinking of the river fish. It's not the biggest fish in the lake, but believe me, it was one of the most beautiful fish there, and I just couldn't get it out of my mind. It was unbelievable. I got down there very early one morning, about 6:30 in the morning, opened the gates, lovely, beautiful morning, and walked around the lake a couple of times, and I found what I was looking for eventually. Looks like some fizzing up at range from one of the car park lake swims. So I got myself set up in there, found a feature that I was familiar with, and put a couple of rods behind it in the silt. I never ever fish on top of the gravel. The natural food of carp never appears there. It's always in the silt to me, and I fished another rod a little bit over to the left of it. Anyway, sat down and I was just happy. It's hard for people to imagine how happy I was, considering that I go fishing all the time. But when you've been in the situation I'd just been in, I couldn't have felt any other way. And I woke up in the morning, put a kettle on, and sort of, as you do, looked accusingly at the rods, and the left-hand rod, those two over the back of a bar at about 70 yards range, just ripped off, absolutely ripped off. I had a mental scrap with it. It was all over the place, putting the rods underneath the other ones and all kinds of crazy stuff, and eventually it rolled into my net, and there before me lay the one fish I'd been dreaming about for a couple of weeks, the river fish, just over 31 pound, and she looked absolutely brilliant in all of her glory. I couldn't have wished for a better carp, and just to sort of underline what a special place it was, the following morning at exactly the same time, I caught one of the oldest fish in the lake. A fish called the prehistoric at 37 pound. It comes out a fair bit, but it's a very, very popular fish, and has got more character than any other fish I think I've ever met. An amazing fish, but what a session. A 31 and a 37, and I just couldn't wait to get back. It was well, I don't know how to explain it. I was still fishing well, not as well as I felt, but I was still able to do what I wanted to do. And I said to Lynn after I'd been home for a couple of days and probably slept for 48 hours too, that I just wanted to get back and keep the ball rolling while I could. I went back the following week. I think I had 3 fish that week. One of the new stockies they put in there, and 2 fish of 29, and the second 29 was another one of those old fish that live in the lake. They look sort of gnarly and like they're made out of mahogany. I just love them. And on the way home, I think my tyres were 2 inches off the ground, and my hair was on fire. It was I just felt so good about everything. And I was back the following week. Now, the following week, as I do, I might have an idea where I want to fish, and you might think about the swim you want to be in before you get there, but I try and keep as open a mind as I possibly can. And this time, I found them a little bit further around the lake. The signs I was looking for, I even think I saw a fish show just behind the spot. And what I didn't do, I had 48 hours, remember, I didn't cast immediately onto that spot. I left it for a couple of hours, walked around the rest of the lake, had a couple of little spots at the other end of the lake in the shallows where I didn't see any fish and didn't disturb anything. And then I went back to where I saw those fish. All the activity had gone, so I thought it was okay to get a lead out. And again, I found a couple of features I was aware of from the times I'd been there before. There was an awful lot of weed out there by now, though, and it became a little bit more difficult to put my hook bait where I wanted it. But I got them in position. Again, 2 hook baits over the back of those 2 little features. There are 2 little humps in the water, into the silt. Baited up again. I mean, I don't know how many. I've probably used about 3 Kia boilies there, and I'm still on the hybrid boilies at this stage. Still 10 and 15 mil hybrid, and the corresponding response pellets. Wherever I'd gone, it worked. So I keep on doing the same thing until the fish tell me not to, and they weren't about to on this session either. Super. You are stunning. Right. This is an incredibly angry fish, and what a contrast to the other 2, but just as good looking. It was amazing, really. I caught 4 fish over the first 2 days, and on the second morning I'd woken up. I'd had a 29 at midnight, and I'd got a little bit of sleep, but I was so excited about what I caught. I got up just before first light, made myself a cup of tea, pulled a bucket out, and went and sat by my rods, and I just sort of gazed across the lake, the mist rolling across, the sun coming up just to my right. It was absolutely perfect. You know, the birds come into life, and I think my alarms, my RXs felt a little bit out of it, so one of them absolutely ripped off, and I mean the tip. I always fish my tips high, and people think I fish them high because it's for some kind of technical reason. It's got absolutely nothing to do with it, and there are no technical reasons for having your tips high anyway. It's simply there because it looks so exciting when you get a bite. You haven't got your 2 rods sort of pointing at where the bait is. You've got them up here, and one of them's going beam, and it's exciting. And it's another part of carp fishing's excitement for me. Anyway, we had a bit of a battle, and I think obviously there are times when you hook a fish and you just know it's going to be a big one. There's all those real powerful lunges, even at range you could feel it. Obviously some weed got involved now again, but I eventually got it into the net, and what a behemoth it was. I mean, absolutely enormous. And you know, I don't care how many big fish I catch, as long as I get that feeling when every fish I ever catch, to be honest with you. I was so excited. And when I got it on the mat, I got a little bit more excited. 41 pound and 10 ounces, a truly enormous fish, and a very old one too. 41 pound and 10 ounces, a new life personal best. And when you think it's something you'll never do again, it makes it just that little bit more special. An absolute unit. And now, as I always say, the best bit. Thank you for lighting my fires, young lady. You are an absolute beast. If you ever wonder where all the weight is, there she is. Built like the proverbial, bless her heart. Okay. That way, what a beast! Kick the tires and light the fires, good daddy. And yeah, I doffed my cap to her. It was an incredible session, and as much as you'd think, yeah, I've done that, I'll take my foot off the pedal, it just poured more fuel on the fire. Made me more determined than ever to catch a couple more of the fish that I wanted to catch. And there was one specific fish, again not the biggest fish in the lake, called the Black Lady, and truly unique carp. I've never seen another carp like it on the planet, and she was in my mind all the time that I was doing all this fishing. I wanted to catch her. Mid-30, I thought, but it wasn't the way I was thinking of. It was the fish itself. Anyway, the next time I went, I found somewhere else to fish. And this was all going to be close in work over the other side of the lake, just off a tiny little point. And what I did was fish the rods just at the bottom of the marginal shelf, which was probably about 3 rod lengths out by the time it levelled off out into the rest of the lake. And that again is where the silt started. So that's where I wanted my bait to be. I didn't bait as heavily in that situation. I think we're all the same when you come to margin fishing. You don't quite do what you do out in the open water, and I'm never sure why, but that's what happened. And I probably tringled a kilo at 10 and 15 mil hybrid and a few response pellets out along the line. I just simply put 2 hook baits along that line of bait, slackened the line off completely, bobbins on the floor, and not a problem. I didn't have anything the first night, but I was aware of fish in the area, so I just kept on doing what I was doing. And about 4:30 in the morning, one of the bobbins was up, smacked into the rod and away, and what a battle. Ran me round one side of the point to back round again. It was just incredible, avoiding all the trees that were hanging over. An incredible fight that had me shaking at the knees, to be honest with you. And when she rolled into the net in my head torch, and I had the red filter on, changes the colour of everything, I could see which fish it was. I don't know how to tell you how it couldn't get any better. I say it all the time, but yes, this is probably the greatest looking lake, fish in the lake. I don't even know what to say. It's unbelievable. Yeah, to feel the way that I do. What a spectacular carp. I have seen the odd picture of it when it gets caught, but to see it in the flesh just takes your breath away. It's the way it should be, really. Hey! This, my friends, is the Black Beauty. 36 pound and 6 ounces, and as far as carp go, I think this is probably one of the most special carp I'll ever catch. Early in November, I've got my poppy on, and I caught this for all those soldiers that have lost their lives. And yeah, brings a tear to my eye when I think about them, but brings a smile to my face when I think about her. It was the Black Lady, and even in that half light of dawn, I could see those massive scales. They look like they're about half an inch thick on the flanks of that fish. Yeah, truly amazing carp, and I was so proud. Just a little over 36 pound, which is, when you look at the fish, it really is not as important as what the fish looks like and what that fish represents. It's such an old fish, and we still have the pleasure to catch her, whoever does, to this day. So yeah, I couldn't have been happier, and I wanted to keep on going. And this area off this little point seemed to be the place. Every time I went, I found fish. The next couple of sessions, I fished there, but all I seemed to catch, I think it was a one bite area, if that makes any sense. Once I'd had one, you weren't certainly going to get another, I don't think. And thankfully, all the bites came on my second night. And remember, I'm still taking pills now. I'm still trying to keep myself up the right way. I didn't want to get into 3 nights fishing. I just don't think I could have handled it. And yeah, the next couple of sessions, I had just a couple of small fish, but it was enough to keep me ticking over. And whilst I was ticking over, I got back again the following week. I was doing this every week. I got back, fished off that little point again, and sometimes all I can think of is catching the older fish in the lake. They're the ones that sort of made that lake what it was, you know. And again, it was just one bite off the front of this point, and what a fish it was. You know, again, you can see from the picture, I mean, she's just... Oh, it's a massive animal. It carved out of solid mahogany, slate grey, at 42 pound and 10 ounces. What an animal! What a fish! And Brad Walker came down from Fox HQ and did some photographs for me, and it was, I couldn't have been more pleased. There was one more fish on my mind though that I really wanted to catch, a fish called the brown fish. And to me, she's one of those carp that look like I want carp to look like, just an old fish, big leathery kind of carp. And yeah, she was on my mind and had been on my mind for so long. And we're talking now, it was about the 10th of December 2020, and I knew I wasn't very well, but I drove myself on. It's what I do. It's how I keep myself going, is to keep pouring as much fuel as I can find, whatever it is, onto that fire. And I got back to the lake, and it was quite easy for me. I thought, instead of walking, I'll go and set up on my little point and see if I can get just one more bite. And I did. I got one more bite, and again, this fish just run me ragged. In the end, I put my chest waders on, wade all the way around the trees on the left hand side of this point, getting onto a little shelf in a swim just round the corner. I'd actually landed the fish from there, and it was the brown fish. Let me introduce you to the brown fish. One of the prizes of this lake at 41 pound and 2 ounces. She's a real jewel and something of an early Christmas present. And all I can do is wish all of you a very, very Merry Christmas. You've supported me through all this thick and thin, and yeah, this one's for you lot. 41 pound and 4 ounces, and I felt so poorly that day. I looked like I'm smiling in the camera, but I just felt poorly, and I couldn't wait to get home. I had absolutely no idea what was about to happen, but it wasn't going to be nice. I spent Christmas with Lynn, and we spent it very quietly, and I was getting more and felt more and more ill. And on New Year's Eve 2020, I was sat at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, sat in my living room. We were going to watch a movie, have a cup of tea and a cake or something. And I said to Lynn, I said, I feel so poorly, I've got to go to bed. By the time I got into the bed, I was shaking like a jelly, absolutely shaking. And then I was sweating buckets. It was just pouring out of me. And I, from that point on, I really don't know what happened for the next 6 days. It was It was just a haze. I do remember looking down to my right and seeing an ambulance lady, one of the emergency paramedics. She was trying to talk to me. I don't know what she was trying to talk to me about, and she got me, they got me onto the gurney, got me out into the ambulance and away to Frimley Park Hospital. Lynn got herself there, and I had no idea what went on, as I said, for the next 5 days. What I do know is that Lynn, as ill as she is and as poorly as she's been for so many years, slept in that horribly uncomfortable little chair just to the left of my bed. For 5 days she slept there. And on the 4th day, they had tried everything. They'd injected me with just about everything, put it into drips and all sorts of stuff. And they decided they'd have to have a conversation with Lynn and tell her what was going on. And to put it in a nutshell, they told her they'd done all they can. They didn't think there was anything else they could do for me. And I was lying in a bed with my wife next to me, who was thinking I was going to die. Somebody, for some unknown reason, hadn't tried penicillin in its pure form, and that was the next thing they put into my drip. And then evidently a few hours later I stirred on my bed, the sweating and the shaking had stopped, and the first thing I did, as I did from the first operation, was see Lynn sat by my bed. I cannot begin to tell you how that felt. I didn't know how serious the situation has become and how close I'd come to knocking on Evan's door, but it was unbelievably close. And I don't know, Lynn wants me to settle down, but as soon as I saw her face, I just wanted to get up and run around like I'd won the FA Cup or something. And I wanted to get on with something, but we needed to get home, and Lynn needed rest just as much as I did. It was an unbelievable experience, but what had happened, I'd got an infection somewhere in my body, and somehow that infection had worked its way into my brain, and it was going to kill me. Everything was inflamed and infected, and it's something that can happen. It's not an unknown entity, but it can happen, and I survived. And I always maintain, through the strength of my wife Lynn, that's how it will always be. And yeah, I'll be going on for a long while yet. And to that end, all I could think about was going fishing. It must drive Lynn round the bloody twist. I have to say that. It's, it's the one thing that I do. I don't just go and set up a bivvy and go to sleep and wait for a bite in the nearest available swim. I go and I look and I work, and that is what keeps me going. And just over the road, we've mentioned it before in this, is Willow Park. And literally I could cast a 4-ounce lead from my back garden in there, really. And I went over, and I was going to meet up with Harry Charrington. This is the 29th of January 2021. And I was going to meet Harry over there, and we were going to film my next edition in the vlog series that I used to do for Fox. And what an unbelievable session it was. The lake was half frozen. It just shows, you fish in the right place, there are carp to be caught. The lake was half frozen, and what I did first off was I put 3 zigs out, one at 3 foot, one at 4, one at 5, and I cast it as tight to the edge of the ice as I could. And from the get-go, I started getting bites, and I think, and I don't want to tell anybody any fibs, it was 27 bites I got in that 24 hours on the bank. And the biggest one was a 27-pound common, a stunning-looking fish, and in all her winter colours. It just made such an amazing feeling for me to do that after what had happened, and it was my way of celebrating it. It was incredible. It just, and having Harry there to talk to and catching some fish while he was there obviously made the filming that much better. It was an amazing experience, and again I'll say it, I'll never ever to be able to thank Willow Park enough. Now, having a good session at Willow obviously kicked me, the idiot, into high gear, and all I could do was think of getting back to my Essex water. To be honest with you, probably from a comfort point of view, as much as I wanted to desperately to catch a certain fish from there. But then that's what a lot of these waters have been over the years. Certainly the ones I fished in the army, they were places that I could sit, think about my future, think about the way I wanted things to go. And I find the best place for me to do that is by the side of a lake, and certainly one that I love and still do to this day, although I don't fish it anymore. So I went back down to Essex. We're very, very early spring now, and it's not a time I'd sort of fished it before, so I spent a lot of time looking and eventually found what I was looking for. The first time up there, I had a 23-pound mirror, and I did a couple more trips after that were more blank than the big bag of blank things. I mean, when you get a session, you don't get any indications of fish. You don't see anything. You have nothing to drive you on. It can get a little bit heartbreaking, but I know what was in that lake, and I just had to keep on going. And to be honest with you, blank sessions are probably put more fuel on my fire than most other things. And I went back after a couple of blanks. I had a 27-pound mirror, and the following trip I could not imagine how bad it would become. I had a 25-pound common. It was about 8 o'clock on my second morning, same as all the other trips. I seemed to get a bite at that time. I did the self-takes, held it up for the camera, and I put it down, made myself a cup of tea, as you do once it had swam off strongly. And then my phone went just as I was coming to the end of that tea, and it was my mother in Plymouth, and her and a friend of hers were sat by the very still body of my father. He had been put into a home through a very rare kind of dementia, and I had to listen to my mum crying down the phone, and all I could think of as she was talking, I was pulling the pegs out from my oval brolly and thinking how quickly I could get down to Plymouth with her. She needed our support. So I very quickly reeled in, legged it back to Aldershot. Lynn and I prepared for the trip to Plymouth the following day. I needed sleep. There's no point in denying how much that tired me out. And the following day we made the trip down to Plymouth to take care of Mum. And obviously there was funerals to sort out and everything. I'm not going to make no secret that I never got on with my father. And the main reason for that trip was to make sure that my mother was okay. She was just about to move into a home, and there she still is, unfortunately. But they are taking care of her. We got down to Plymouth and took care of her in the short term for a few days, and we got everything organised. And we had to return obviously for the funeral. And I just needed some time off from fishing, really, to come to terms with the fact that I didn't have a home 20 anymore. My mother and father, their home was going to be sold. My mum had moved into a home, and it's a life-changing event. And a very sad one. My mum was so upset over that time, but hopefully Lynn and I gave her the support that she needed. And of course, at some time, whether I wanted to or not, I started thinking about fishing again. And the only place, again, where I thought I could get a grip of myself and decide where I wanted to go, and I was in a bit of a mix-up, I really was. I went back to Essex. I caught some lovely fish too. I caught a beautiful long 31-pound common, an amazing fish, and a very well-known fish in that lake. I'd never caught it before, and I couldn't believe it. And thankfully, Sean McSpadden was on the lake. He was testing out some little bits of products down there, so it was wonderful to share a moment with him. I went back again and I caught a 24-pound mirror, but it was midsummer, and everywhere was spawning. The fish it was absolutely going mad, and I don't want to fish for fish when they're spawning, and I don't particularly want to catch them just after they've spawned. So it becomes a time of year, and it always has been, when I just don't quite know what to do. But anyway, in the summer, as I said, I'm just worried about all the fish, but we're going to do a surface program. 3 of us from Fox will go out, see if we can catch some carp off the surface, and the different ways that we went about it. And my decision was to go up to Farlow's, not far from my house, up towards the M25, and a lovely place to go, a place that has so much history for so many people. It's done some wonderful fishing, and I met up with Brad one day. We went up there. It was my intention. I'd found loads and loads of fish, but they were building some little lodges on that particular part of the lake, and I couldn't get anywhere near them, which was unfortunate. So Brad and I eventually trudged off down to the other end of where all this building was going on, and I started feeding some mixes out into the wind. There were rafts of weed out in front of me, and I was starting to wonder if we'd ever get a bite, to be honest with you. But I actually saw a couple of fish taking probably 50 yards out behind a little shack of weed that had formed on the surface, and the mixers were gathering around it, and they came up taking them. I whacked my bubble float out just beyond it, reeled it in, and let it swing in, and it swung in absolutely perfectly. And even from that range, with a little bit of chop on the water, I saw the mouth and the shoulders of the fish as it took it, whack, and I mean, it was a disaster. From the moment I hooked it till the moment we got it in the net, there was so much in weed involved, and it was so awkward to net it eventually. And Brad, bless his heart, eventually, and you can see it on the Fox YouTube channel, he just switched the camera on, the main camera on still, and just filmed it all. And he came over. We literally had to drag it into the net, to be honest with you. But she was in the net, no harm to the fish at all, and a little over 31 pound. I couldn't have wished for a better carp, especially as you've got a camera forcing it up your nostrils and you're trying to do what you're doing. And we had a 17 pounder to finish the program off, a 17 pound common from another area in the lake. It was a fantastic trip, and the more I can do for Fox and Mainline, because of how much they do for me, the merrier as far as I'm concerned. But whilst I was thinking what I needed to do for the rest of the year, I went back to Farlow's the following week. The fish had spawned evidently, but I could go fishing, and I had several fish up to 29 pound, and one of the 29 pounders I had was a very famous scaly old fish from years ago. It actually hangs up in the wall in the shop there. I forgot what it was called, but it was Chili's fish for about 5 minutes while I held it up and photographed it. And I can't tell you how happy I was about that. And a huge thank you to Farlow to help me sort out what I needed to do. There was a lake a little bit up the road from me called Swan Valley. It's probably the last lake on the Yateley complex I hadn't actually fished. It was being run at a syndicate at the time, and I got myself a ticket for it. And I have to be honest, it was one of those lakes, and there's been a few over the years, that I never ever got excited about. I caught some fish from it, none of the big fish, but that didn't matter. I had some regular action out there, but I never really got going on there. The first fish I caught again was a really old fish, a 28 pound mirror. Everybody knew it. They called it the mug, unfortunately. I don't know how they can give fish such names, but they'll say that's why I called it, I suspect. But it was a lovely way to open my account. I caught some wonderful fish. Most of them were commons, and I thoroughly enjoyed it, but it wasn't for me, and I just wanted to get back to Essex. And again, I needed time to think about what I wanted to do. But when I went back to Essex and I caught a couple of fish, I knew that my time was over there. It had the end of the year before it ended when I caught the brownfish, really. And as I left the gates, I doffed my cap to her. She's a lake. I will go back and fish again, probably in a couple of years' time, if they'll allow me, and I will enjoy it just as much. But for now, my time there was done.